It was just another ordinary day. Earth, in all its complexity, continued its daily grind. People bustling through their routines, children laughing in schoolyards, workers making their way through the towering cities. And amidst all this, Jack Monroe sat in his small, nondescript office, typing away at his computer. He was a data analyst for a large communications company, tasked with reviewing satellite feeds, interpreting data, and ensuring the smooth flow of global communications. His job was important, but it was also mundane. It wasn't glamorous, and Jack was okay with that. He liked the predictability of it all. But today, everything was about to change. It began with a strange anomaly in the data, a tiny disruption in one of the satellite communication channels that Jack was tasked with overseeing. At first, it was nothing significant. A little flicker on the screen, an unexplainable spike in the signal. Jack wasn't worried. He'd seen these types of glitches before. But there was something about this one that piqued his curiosity. It wasn't just a glitch. It was something more. It was deliberate. As Jack zoomed in on the data, he noticed a sequence of strange, erratic pulses that didn't belong. A few seconds later, the static cleared, and a sequence of numbers appeared on his screen, followed by an unfamiliar language. His fingers hesitated over the keyboard. He wasn't supposed to be decoding transmissions, but something told him that this was different. Something important was happening. He quickly ran the sequence through several decoding algorithms, and as the encryption slowly unraveled, Jack's eyes widened. The message wasn't random. It was a warning. Humanity has been observed. This is your final warning. You are not alone. Jack sat back in his chair, the room suddenly feeling too small, too confined. His heart began to race. He looked around his dimly lit office, feeling the weight of the message pressing down on him. A chill ran down his spine. It was as though something far beyond human comprehension had just reached out from the depths of space and touched Earth. He immediately tried to alert his supervisors, but the message was too cryptic to relay easily. No one would believe him. Not yet. His hands shook as he scrolled through the transmission, trying to understand what he was seeing. The message continued. You are being watched. The species you have encountered will not let you go without a fight. Prepare yourself. Jack's breath caught in his throat. His mind raced, trying to process what he had just uncovered. He ran the message through the satellite's feedback systems, checking for any inconsistencies, but everything checked out. This was real. But who, what, was watching them? And why now? Suddenly, the data feed blinked, and the message changed. The language on the screen shifted to something Jack understood. An image appeared, a map of the stars, and at the center, an unfamiliar symbol glowed ominously. The location, marked by the symbol, was light years away from Earth, deep in the uncharted reaches of space. And then, a single line appeared at the bottom of the screen. You've been observed long enough. The decision is yours. Will you face the consequences? Jack felt his pulse quicken. The weight of the situation was heavy now. He wasn't sure what this meant or who was behind it, but something inside him screamed that this was the moment. The tipping point had arrived. His mind raced through the possibilities. Was this some kind of alien message? Was it a threat? Had the human race been targeted by some higher intelligence, some galactic power that had been watching from afar? Was this the moment Earth would face its reckoning? As Jack sat frozen in his chair, trying to comprehend the enormity of what he had uncovered, a sudden beeping sound startled him. The communication system was flashing. Someone was trying to reach him. Someone from the higher-ups at his company. Jack quickly answered, still struggling to make sense of the message that had just appeared on his screen. Jack, we've been tracking some strange anomalies coming from deep space. The voice on the other end crackled. It was his supervisor, but the tone was different. Urgent, almost frantic. It's not a glitch, Jack. The readings we're getting are unlike anything we've ever seen before. They're coming from the coordinates in your system. Jack's blood ran cold. Could it be true? Had his discovery been linked to what his company was detecting? He quickly ran through the sequence of events in his mind. The strange pulses, the cryptic message, the coordinates. It all connected. The anomaly wasn't just some cosmic glitch. It was a warning. Humanity was being washed. "We need to report this to the authorities," Jack said, his voice trembling. "Now." But his supervisor's voice crackled again, more urgently this time. "You don't understand, Jack. We've already reported it, but the response from the military, they're not ready. They think it's just another cosmic anomaly. No one believes us. But this is real. It's a warning. And the moment we try to do anything about it, we may have just crossed a line." Jack's mind raced. What line? What was he talking about? He had no idea what kind of danger Earth was in, but something told him that this was just the beginning, that their entire existence had been tipped upside down in a matter of hours. The transmission continued, and his supervisor's voice lowered, filled with urgency. "Jack, we've been receiving encrypted messages. I don't know from where, but the whole thing's linked. We're not alone. There are other species watching, waiting, and they don't want us to know. The moment you decode that message, you might have just awakened something that cannot be undone." Jack felt a cold shiver run down his spine. He thought back to the warning in the message, the part about facing the consequences. It was clear now. Earth was on the edge of something far more dangerous than they could possibly comprehend. The world was no longer what it had been just hours ago. Humanity's existence was under threat. And this moment was the tipping point. The moment of realization. It all hit him like a tidal wave. The data, the warning, the strange new communication. Humanity was not alone in the universe, and now they were being washed. But the worst part of it all, the realization that Earth had just unknowingly crossed a line, the kind of line that could no longer be undone. Humanity had been passive, calm, and patient for centuries. They had stood by as alien forces took what they wanted, watched as civilizations far more advanced than their own ignored them, used them, and exploited their resources. For years, humanity had lived in the shadow of these extraterrestrial civilizations, but that patience had finally been tested, and now it was broken. Jack leaned back in his chair, staring at the glowing map on his screen. The coordinates were clear, and the alien presence was undeniable. Somewhere far out in space, there was an entity, an intelligence, that had been watching Earth all this time, and they had just sent a message to humanity. The silence of space had been broken, and now humanity had a choice. The message was clear: face the consequences or prepare for an unknown future. The tipping point had arrived, and there was no going back. Jack's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden burst of static on his screen. The message had changed again. This time, the language wasn't just a warning. It was a declaration. "You have crossed the line, and now you must face what comes next." Jack's breath caught in his throat as he stared at the final line. It was not just a message, it was a challenge. Humanity had waited too long to act, and now it was time to pay the price. The world had never been the same since the invasion. The Karnak, a terrifying alien race, had descended upon Earth with a brutality that humanity could scarcely comprehend. In just a matter of days, entire cities were wiped off the map. The weapons they used were unlike anything Earth had ever seen. Energy blasts that disintegrated buildings in the blink of an eye, and soldiers that seemed impervious to human weaponry. The Earth itself trembled under the weight of their enormous warships, which blotted out the sky, casting shadows that stretched across entire continents. Humanity had been forced into submission. For centuries, Earth had sat quietly on the edge of the galaxy, ignored by the more advanced alien civilizations. But the Karnak had arrived with a single, overwhelming purpose: to conquer, destroy, and enslave. And for a while, humanity had been helpless to stop them. But something had begun to change. The invasion, which had started with fear, had begun to breed something else. something that Karnak had not counted on: Defiance. The turning point. It had started with Jack Monroe, a regular data analyst who had stumbled upon a hidden transmission during his daily work. The alien message had been a warning, a cryptic call that led to the discovery of the Karnak's weakness. Jack's accidental uncovering of that weakness, the Karnak's vulnerability to electromagnetic pulses, had been the catalyst for humanity's defiance. A small group of survivors, rallying around this newfound knowledge, had begun to strike back. Jack, once an ordinary man, found himself at the heart of humanity's resistance, and as the days wore on, the people of Earth, battered, bruised, and bloodied, began to rise. The resistance formed quickly, with humans from all corners of the globe joining together in the fight. Once fragmented nations, separated by politics and old rivalries, now stood united under a single cause: survival. Earth's leaders, those who had once thought humanity powerless against the Karnak, found themselves mobilizing every last resource. The military began to strategize, using the knowledge that Jack and the resistance had uncovered. Weapons were re-engineered, old tactics were dusted off, and new alliances were forged. It wasn't just a war to survive. It was a war to reclaim their home. For the first time in centuries, humanity was no longer a passive bystander in the galactic order. They were fighters, and the Karnak were beginning to realize it. Rising from the ashes, the first significant counterattack came when the resistance used the EMP weapon to disable a fleet of Karnak ships that had been stationed over the eastern seaboard. What was once an unthinkable possibility became a harsh reality. Humanity had taken the fight to them. The Karnak had been caught off guard. For years, they had assumed Earth's inhabitants were weak, primitive, helpless creatures who would easily bend to their will. They had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt and survive. But the resistance's success was not without sacrifice. The first battle had been brutal, and although humanity had managed to disable the Karnak fleet temporarily, the cost had been high. Entire cities had been lost in the crossfire, and the death toll continued to rise as the fighting intensified. Yet, amid the chaos, humanity found strength in unity. The survivors began to rebuild, not just physically, but mentally. They were no longer just defending their homes. They were fighting for their dignity, for the right to exist as a species. For the first time in their history, humans were willing to fight not just for survival, but for victory. The battle for Earth. The next few months saw a series of escalating clashes between Earth's forces and the Karnak. The Karnak, once confident in their superiority, now found themselves facing a human race that was willing to do anything to protect their world. The key to humanity's resistance wasn't just in their weapons, it was in their ability to adapt quickly. The Karnak had been trained to deal with alien species that obeyed orders and followed predictable patterns. But humanity was different. Earth's forces were diverse, filled with individuals from all walks of life, and they were driven by the primal instinct to protect what was theirs. In one of the largest battles of the war, Earth's forces launched an all-out assault against a Karnak stronghold that had been established in the remnants of the Pacific Northwest. It was a high-risk mission, and the stakes were enormous. If the Karnak were able to hold this position, they would gain a foothold on Earth that would be almost impossible to remove. The battle began with fierce aerial dogfights, where Earth's ragtag fleet of aircraft, rebuilt with the remains of old military tech, clashed against the powerful Karnak ships. The skies were filled with explosions as both sides exchanged fire, each side trying to outmaneuver the other in the deadly dance of war. On the ground, humanity's forces fought with relentless courage. They knew the odds were stacked against them, but they refused to back down. Led by Jack, the resistance fighters pressed forward, utilizing guerrilla tactics and surprise attacks to break the Karnak's lines. It was messy. It was chaotic, but it was working. As the battle raged on, Jack and his team made their way toward the Karnak command center. With the EMP weapon in hand, they infiltrated the heavily fortified position, knowing that this strike could cripple the invaders once and for all. But as they reached their target, the unimaginable happened. A Xarnoc warlord, the very one who had led the invasion, appeared before them, his massive form towering over the resistance team. He was furious, his eyes glowing with red fire as he let out a bone-chilling roar. "You will regret this," the warlord growled in a guttural voice. "The Xarnoc do not fall so easily." Jack, however, stood firm. "You're wrong," he said, voice steady. "It's you who will regret underestimating humanity. We will not be your slaves." In that moment, something shifted in the warlord's eyes. For the first time, he seemed uncertain, as though he had never considered that humanity might fight back so fiercely. Jack activated the EMP, sending a pulse of energy that cascaded through the enemy systems, crippling their technology and disabling their ships. The Xarnoc warlord stumbled, his power source flickering out as his once mighty weapon systems failed. Jack's team surged forward, overpowering the alien leader. The tide of the battle turned, and with it, Earth's forces began to push the Xarnoc back. The fall of the Xarnoc. The final weeks of the war were nothing short of harrowing. Earth's forces, emboldened by their success, launched a series of counterattacks that slowly began to dismantle the Xarnoc's grip on the planet. As the Xarnoc forces retreated, the human resistance continued to press them, determined to win at any cost. The warlords, unable to regroup, began to fracture. Without their advanced technology, the Xarnoc were nothing more than a scattered and disorganized force. Slowly, the resistance took back city after city, pushing the invaders off the planet. On the final day of the battle, humanity stood victorious. The last of the Xarnoc were driven from Earth's atmosphere, their ships limping back into space, never to return. Earth was scared, its cities shattered, but the spirit of its people had never been stronger. Jack stood amidst the rubble, his heart pounding with relief and exhaustion. Humanity had done it. They had faced an overwhelming enemy, and they had won. A new beginning. The cost of victory was immense. The war had left deep scars on Earth's people, but humanity had proved something undeniable. They could not be broken. They had fought for their right to exist, and they had emerged victorious. As Earth's leaders began to rebuild, they knew that the Xarnoc would never forget the day humanity defied them. The universe, once oblivious to Earth's existence, now knew that Earth would not stand idly by. Humanity had proven that their defiance was a force that could not be ignored. And as Jack stood on the rebuilt streets of what had once been a war-torn city, he allowed himself a quiet smile. The world had changed forever, but humanity had found its place among the stars. The universe would never forget the day humanity's patience broke, and neither would Earth. The war had reached its boiling point. For weeks, humanity had been locked in a struggle for survival against the Xarnoc, a ruthless alien race that had invaded Earth, determined to conquer it. They had come with their superior technology and unstoppable firepower, their massive warships filling the skies, casting ominous shadows over every city. At first, humanity had been helpless, crushed under the weight of the invaders' might. But something had shifted. The tide was beginning to turn. Earth's resistance had grown stronger with every passing day. The Xarnoc, once confident in their ability to wipe out the human race in a matter of days, had underestimated Earth's resilience. Humanity, though technologically inferior, had found a way to fight back. They had adapted, using their ingenuity and spirit to create weapons that could harm the Xarnoc. And the first major victory had been achieved with the activation of an EMP device, a weapon capable of disabling the Xarnoc's advanced technology. But despite this success, the final showdown was still to come. Earth's forces had gathered, their remaining fighters united under a single cause, to drive the Xarnoc from their home once and for all. The final battle would be one of immense stakes. It would determine the fate of humanity. Jack Monroe, the unlikely hero who had unlocked the secret to the Xarnoc's weakness, now stood at the front lines of humanity's fight for survival. He had come a long way since the first days of the invasion. He had seen friends and comrades fall. He had witnessed destruction beyond anything he could have imagined. But now, with the final battle on the horizon, Jack's resolve was unshakable. Humanity would not be defeated. The calm before the storm. It was a cold morning. The air smelled faintly of smoke and ash, remnants of the ongoing war that had devastated much of the planet. The skies were clear, but Jack could feel the tension in the air, like the stillness before a storm. He stood in a temporary command center, a makeshift fortress constructed from the remnants of old military bases and fortified bunkers. Outside, the distant sounds of gunfire and explosions echoed across the ruined landscape. Humanity's final stand was imminent. Jack stood at the window, staring out at the war-torn city. Behind him, resistance leaders and military commanders were strategizing their final assault. The Karnak had set up their base of operations in a city now known as the Karnak Citadel, a heavily fortified fortress located in what was once the heart of New York. It was here that the final battle would take place. If humanity could breach the citadel, the war would be over. But that was a big if. The Karnak, aware that they were losing their grip on Earth, had made their final preparations. Their technology had been disrupted by the EMP, but they still held an advantage in sheer numbers and firepower. They had regrouped, and their forces were vast. The battle would be fierce, and no one knew if humanity could truly win. "We don't have much time, Jack," General Richards said, pulling Jack from his thoughts. "The Karnak are preparing for their final push. If we don't act now, they'll strike first." Jack turned to face the general, his eyes filled with determination. "We'll act. We have no choice. But we can't win this with just brute force. We need to hit them where it hurts, and that means taking out their command center." Richards nodded, his expression grim. "We've got a plan in place, but it's going to be a tough one. We'll need all the firepower we can get." Jack looked around the room at the group of fighters and commanders who had gathered to plan the assault. They were tired, battle-worn, but there was a fire in their eyes. Humanity was on the brink of extinction, and they were ready to give everything for a chance at victory. "It's now or never," Jack said. "We fight for our future. We fight for Earth." The battle begins. The sun was setting as the Resistance's forces gathered at the outskirts of the Karnak Citadel. Jack's heart raced as he surveyed the battlefield. The stakes couldn't have been higher. They were about to launch their most daring assault yet, an all-out assault on the Citadel's heart, the Karnak's central command. The plan was simple but dangerous. The Resistance's forces would split into two groups. One would attack the outer defenses to draw the Karnak's attention, while the second, smaller group, led by Jack, would infiltrate the citadel itself and plant an EMP device at the heart of the Karnak's command center. The EMP would disrupt their last remaining technology, ensuring that their forces were left helpless. But getting inside the citadel would be the toughest part. The Resistance moved in formation, cautiously making their way toward the massive citadel. The city around them was in ruins, the streets littered with the debris of a war that had lasted too long. Alien warships loomed overhead, scanning for any sign of resistance. The enemy was everywhere. As they neared the citadel's outer defenses, the first shots were fired. Karnak soldiers appeared from the shadows, their massive, insectoid forms emerging from the rubble. They were armed with advanced energy weapons, their eyes glowing red with fury. The battle had begun. Human forces, though outgunned, fought fiercely, using the terrain to their advantage. Resistance fighters fired their rifles, using guerrilla tactics to take down the Karnak soldiers one by one. Jack and his team moved quickly, staying low and avoiding detection as much as possible. Every second counted. They had to reach the command center. The Karnak responded quickly, launching counterattacks with devastating force. The resistance fighters pushed forward, but they were met with fierce resistance. Explosions rocked the ground as alien ships rained fire down from above. The battlefield was chaos. Screams of soldiers mixed with the crackling energy blasts from alien weapons. Jack's team pressed forward, making their way through the city's destroyed buildings. Every step brought them closer to the citadel. The sounds of battle were deafening, but Jack's focus remained on the goal. Reach the heart of the citadel and plant the EMP device. The clash of titans. As they reached the entrance to the citadel, they were confronted by the Karnak leader, an imposing figure towering over them, covered in dark, reflective armor. His eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and his voice boomed as he spoke. "You humans are foolish," the Karnak leader said, his voice filled with contempt. "You think you can defeat us? We are the mightiest species in the galaxy." Jack stepped forward, his eyes hard with resolve. "We're not just fighting for our survival, we're fighting for the future. And we won't let you take that from us." The Karnak leader let out a cruel laugh. "Your defiance is meaningless." With a roar, he charged, his massive form moving with shocking speed. Jack and his team barely had time to react as the Karnak leader swung a massive energy weapon, sending shockwaves through the air. The ground shook as the resistance fought back, using their weapons and their wits to keep the leader at bay. The battle raged on, but Jack knew they couldn't hold off the Karnak leader forever. He had one chance. He and his team had to plant the EMP device and disable the Karnak's command center before it was too late. With one final surge of energy, Jack and his team reached the command center's core. The Karnak leader followed, but Jack activated the EMP, sending a pulse of energy through the citadel's systems. The Karnak leader screamed in fury as his energy weapon malfunctioned, and the alien technology around him began to fail. The EMP had worked. The citadel's lights flickered, and the Karnak leader fell to his knees. Without their advanced weaponry, the Karnak forces were vulnerable. The resistance poured into the citadel, overpowering the remaining alien soldiers and pushing them out of the city. Victory and the cost of war. As the Karnak retreated, Earth's forces stood victorious. The battle had been hard-fought, but humanity had proven that it was not to be underestimated. The citadel was now in their hands, and the Karnak forces were broken. The war was not over, but humanity had dealt a decisive blow. Jack stood amid the ruins of the citadel, the silence of victory settling over him. But the cost had been high. Thousands had died. The cities were in ruins. The road to recovery would be long, but humanity had shown that it could fight back. For the first time since the invasion began, Jack allowed himself to breathe. Humanity's defiance had been the key to their survival. And as long as they had the will to fight, the universe would never forget the moment humanity rose against the odds. The war had been long, and the scars it left on Earth were deep. For months, humanity had fought against the Karnak, a ruthless alien race that had invaded the planet with overwhelming force. Entire cities had been reduced to rubble, and millions of lives were lost in the brutal conflict. The once thriving world had been shattered, but through it all, humanity had refused to surrender. They had fought back with everything they had, driven by a simple, unshakable belief. Earth was theirs, and no one would take it from them. And now, after all the bloodshed, the final battle had been won. Jack Monroe stood at the edge of the battlefield, gazing out over the ruined landscape. The sun was rising in the distance, casting a soft golden light across the destruction. It was strange, this quiet after the storm. For so long, the world had been consumed by the chaos of war. Now, with the Karnak defeated and their ships retreating into the void of space, there was silence, a silence that felt both peaceful and surreal. Jack's heart pounded in his chest as he surveyed the devastation around him. The city that had once stood proudly as a beacon of human achievement was now little more than a skeletal ruin. The buildings were half destroyed, their charred remains jutting up like broken bones. The streets were littered with debris and the remains of fallen soldiers, both human and alien. But amidst the destruction, there was hope. Humanity had fought back against the invaders and won. The Karnak, their once feared forces shattered, had retreated into the stars, leaving behind a planet scared but still breathing. Earth had survived. The aftermath. Jack had never imagined the cost of victory would be so high. As he walked through the wreckage, he passed by the remnants of soldiers who had fought beside him. Some of them still alive, but many lying silent, and still, their sacrifice a reminder of the price of survival. The world's leaders had called it a victory, but Jack knew that the true cost could never be measured in numbers. The victory was theirs, but it had come at a price too steep to ever truly repay. Yet, even in the face of such immense loss, humanity was already beginning to rebuild. The resistance forces, those who had led the fight against the Xarnuk, had begun working together to clear the debris, to gather the survivors, and to piece together what had been broken. "We won, Jack," General Richards said, approaching him. The general's face was grim, but there was a glint of pride in his eyes. "It's over. We've driven them back. Earth is ours again." Jack nodded, but his thoughts were elsewhere. He had seen the faces of the fallen, the friends he had lost. The war had ended, but the pain of the journey would linger for a long time. Still, there was something to be said for survival. Despite everything, humanity had proven its strength, its ability to endure. "Yeah," Jack said softly, "but at what cost?" General Richards looked at him, understanding in his eyes. "The price of freedom has always been high. We knew that when we decided to fight. But now we have to build something new. A world where we're not at the mercy of invaders, where we can stand tall and proud." Jack looked at the horizon, where the first rays of sunlight touched the earth. A new day was dawning. The darkness of the past had been pushed back, and humanity had earned the right to live freely again. Rebuilding the future. In the days following the final victory, Earth began the slow, painful process of rebuilding. Cities that had once been reduced to rubble were now being cleared and reconstructed. The people of Earth, once divided by borders and politics, were coming together like never before. There was no time for division now. The war had shown humanity that they were stronger when united. Every person had a part to play, and every hand was needed to rebuild what had been destroyed. Jack found himself working alongside engineers and scientists to repair the damage to Earth's infrastructure. The EMP technology that had helped disable the Xarnuk's weapons was now being used to restore power to the planet. The advanced technology humanity had gained from the Xarnuk's downfall was being integrated into Earth's systems, creating a new, more advanced world. But it wasn't just technology that was being rebuilt. The spirit of humanity was being restored as well. Across the world, people were coming together to help each other, to heal the wounds that the war had caused. Families were reunited, and communities were forming again. The world was scared, but the human spirit had proven its resilience. They had survived, and now they would thrive. Jack spent his days working with the survivors, helping to organize relief efforts and coordinating rebuilding projects. At night, he would sit with the other members of the resistance, sharing stories of the battles they had fought and the friends they had lost. It was bittersweet. They had won, but the scars of war would remain. The legacy of victory. One day, as Jack walked through the ruins of what had once been a thriving city, he stopped in front of a memorial that had been erected to honor the fallen. The names of thousands of soldiers, civilians, and resistance fighters were etched into the stone. Jack ran his fingers over the names, each one a reminder of the sacrifice that had been made for Earth's survival. He thought about the friends he had lost, the brave souls who had given everything to ensure that humanity had a future. Their sacrifice would never be forgotten. Their legacy would live on in the new world they had fought for. As he stood there, deep in thought, General Richards approached him once again. This time, there was a glint of hope in his eyes. "We've done it, Jack," the general said. "We've saved Earth. We've proven that no matter what happens, humanity can never be broken." Jack nodded, looking out over the city that was slowly being rebuilt. "I know, but the real victory is in what we do next. This is just the beginning." Richards smiled. "The new dawn is here, Jack, and it's ours to shape." The new dawn. As the days passed, humanity began to realize that the war with the Tarnak, while a defining moment in their history, was not the end of their journey. It was the beginning of a new era. The human race had proven its strength, its resilience, and its ability to fight back when cornered. But now, it was time to focus on the future. The global leaders, once divided, came together to form a new alliance, an alliance dedicated to peace, cooperation, and the betterment of humanity. The lessons learned from the war, the sacrifices made, would guide them in building a new world, one that would never again allow itself to be ruled by invaders. The dawn of a new age had begun, and humanity, stronger than ever, would rise from the ashes of war and build a future that honored the memory of those who had fallen.